Welcome to the Mystic Cast. I'm your host, GLO. Tuning in today is the esteemed Constantin von Hoffmeister, Dugin's editor and esteemed intellectual. And we're going to be exploring a lot of deep philosophical topics today. And I'm personally incredibly impressed by your ability to edit Dugin, especially in this book right here, because I was reading Pneumachia in Russian, and you compiling it into a readable English text is very difficult, and I know what I put my editor through. So I know what it takes to put a book together. So I was very, very impressed by your work as a political scientist, especially some of Dugin's books like Templars of the Proletariat. I think he wrote right after the fall of the Soviet Union, correct?
Right. Yeah. In the 90s. Yeah. Right.
And he's kind of in this not the most lucid state. Like there's a lot of pressure on him. I think he's scrambling for a new state ideology for Russia, and he's trying to reconcile the communist and the czarist past, right? Because Yeltsinism isn't working out well. That's how I understand it. But your ability to put those texts together in English, and a lot of times the translation from Russian to English is very, very challenging. So the fact that you did that is truly, truly amazing, and I'm very, very impressed. And I think we met. There's this guy Isaac Simpson, right?
Yeah. I've met him I met him in LA in 2000.
Oh, okay, yeah. So as you know, I write in a trollish idiolect that's fitting for the internet, and I wrote an article. It was called "White Women Make Sex Gay." It was an attack on Protestantism and its applications in the bedroom, and he really appreciated that, and I think that's kind of how we met each other. So I guess, for me, the first question is, you're a very serious political theorist, and, my book has an experimental style, I would argue, right? And it's also Platonic in character. I don't know if you caught that, because tarot cards and Jewish Kabbalism are Platonic. They're from Neoplatonic. And obviously, the cover is Platonic, and I kind of see my book, as, I don't want to say a continuation. I think it's a version of, or it's Dugin inspired, I would argue. But I'm really curious about your view of it. How, as a devout Duginist, right? Here you're seeing a Kabbalistic Duginism, right? Which I don't think anyone expected from, but here we are, right? So what are your impressions? How? Yeah,
I would say if you look at the Templars of the Proletariat, which was written in the 90s, so it's like I would say it's a completely different Dugin than the Dugin today. It's like the radical Dugin, basically. And he talks about, national Bolshevism. But I think it's a lot of people, especially on the right, they get triggered when you use the term national Bolshevism because they don't like the second part, right? They hear Bolshevism, and for them, they're like Pavlov's dogs, right? They react a certain way. They get very aggressive and like, how can you possibly, like that stuff? It's Bolshevism, it's communism, and anti-white, etc. But I think it's way too simple, and there are some esoteric layers to it, because it is sort of like the empire of the end, because Dugin wants to fuse like the left and the right, or beyond left and right, so to speak. And the whole ideology of National Bolshevism makes sense if you look at it from a continental perspective, from a European perspective. European, I mean, the classic phrase from Dublin to Vladivostok, so Western Europe, but also Russia, and basically combine them into like a hyper empire. And I think the idea of National Bolshevism goes back to the 1920s when you had like certain people in the conservative revolution in Germany uh, that were not happy with the state of affairs after World War I in the Weimar Republic, like the liberal decadence and the degeneracy. So I think one of the most important proponents, German proponents of National Bolshevism, who's also mentioned in Dugin's book, was Ernst Niekisch. And Ernst Niekisch called himself a National Bolshevik, but he was not a classical communist. I think he was more of a German nationalist in the sort of like Prussian fashion. And well, he envisioned like a future alliance between Germany and the young Soviet Union precisely because he realized that the plutocratic West, the capitalist West, was the real enemy, the real insidious enemy. And he saw a lot of Prussian ascetic traditions realized in the early Soviet Union. So, like the militaristic style, I say the frugality that was preached at the time, the focus on the collective rather than the individual, and labor as an ennobling virtue and not just an activity. And it was very Prussian, and he thought it was completely applicable to Germany at the time. So he wanted to create a sort of fusion of a nationalist state, but with a communist economic system, because he believed that the Germans, as a nation and as a people, didn't really belong to the West. They were really more part of the East. And he thought Germany should orient itself not towards, I mean, England and the United States, the two great powers at the time, but towards, well, the Soviet Union and even what he called the oppressed and colonized peoples. And well, obviously, we know how it ended because then the Nazis came to power and they had different ideas. Let's say ideas that were diametrically opposed to Nietzsche's ideas.
So,
And,
sorry to.
yeah, it's okay.
There's a Russian man called Nikolai Starikov.
Right.
He's pretty well known.
Yeah, I know. I'm familiar with it.
Okay, so he wrote a book. It's called "Who Turned Hitler Against Stalin."
Right, I read the book actually.
Okay, and so
Right.
he discusses the finances of the Third Reich
Right.
and how I think I don't want to misrepresent anyone. He views the Third Reich as almost a parody of Prussianism that was put there by the British, the victors of World War I, to, the same way that I'm Jewish, it's okay. The same way that Israel uses ISIS to clear out Syria.
Yeah, right.
They used the Germans to try and clear out Russia,
Yeah.
hoping.
Well, I know this theory. I'm not sure I buy it, to be honest.
Okay.
Well, the only reason I have problems with it, I just don't see, like, if the British used, say, Nazi Germany
Sure.
as a sort of a battering ram against the Soviet Union, why did Germany have to wage a two-front war? Why did England not accept Germany's peace offers, like with Rudolf Hess, for example, when he landed in Scotland?
Well, Starikov says that there's a real war and there's a fake war.
Yeah, possibly.
The initial war is to consolidate an industrial base, right? So the initial, like, Czechoslovakia, all of them were given in a fake war. And then once they had the industrial base to take on the Soviet Union, that was supposed to be the real war, because they didn't have a contingency plan for if Hitler was going to be assassinated. They didn't have a chain of succession, right?
Right, I see. Yeah, but then the Germans lost against the Soviet Union, and then Britain, which was then, I mean, with the United States, replaced Britain as a dominant power after World War II, and Britain became a second-rate power, so to speak,
I,
like America's lapdog. So I don't really see it, to be honest. Like
so
because
I guess okay. Sorry to. So I guess let's say within fascism, right? So um, I've read Evola. I've done my reading. Um, do you sense elements of Sabbateanism?
I do,
Um,
right? I do.
so because it's one thing to blame fascism on the German people,
Well,
but I don't want to do that.
I would even argue that Germany was not even a fascist state. It was a national socialist state. I think there's a difference between, say, Italy, Mussolini, and fascism, and Germany and National Socialism. I mean, I know it's very popular to throw everything in one pot and use the term fascism as like a blanket term. But even in Nazi Germany, in the Third Reich, a lot of like Nazi officials, they viewed the term fascism as an insult. So I mean, if you had
Okay,
been in,
okay. Sorry, I used the incorrect terms.
no, no,
So okay,
no,
so no,
right,
so let's say okay, so let's say there's National Socialism of Adolf Hitler, right? And they
right,
have a Thule Society mysticism,
right.
right? But for me, the question is, what is the source of that mysticism, and could it be Sabbatean Frankism?
It could
Because
be, right? I
because
mean,
when you start digging in, like there's a Hebrew letter Lamed, which looks a lot like the SS rune. Um, I don't know how much you've dug into Kabbalistic mysticism, but there are a lot of similarities. Let's say with the lightning and the Kabbalistic tree of life, right?
right,
So because the Sabbatean position is it functions as like a Hegelian dialectics of negation, and
hmm,
that in order to create Israel, you have to negate European Jewry, right? And a lot of them fake converted to other religions. They're crypto Jews, correct? Sorry to just go into the most controversial thing right away
yeah,
on you.
right, hmm,
Um, so, so I guess when you're looking within, let's say, a national Bolshevism, like let's say, okay, like with Bolshevism, you have a hammer and sickle, so you have a full blown Saturn rune, right?
right.
So it, I just feel that there's very strong Kabbalistic influence there, and it could be in an antithesis, right? Like if you look at the astrology when the Soviet Union was came into being, stuff like that, right? Like there's certain or Albert Pike had the three world wars that he was pushing, right, in the 1870s, and that could click into that. Does that because in when you look at Dugin's book Political Altera, right, Sabbateanism is explicitly mentioned, right,
Right.
and I would assume that as an editor, you are well versed in Jacob Frank, Sabbatai Zevi, and Nathan of Gaza, who are kind of the theorists. When you call America Faustian, right?
Right.
Um, it would be Faustian in that sense.
Right.
Is that
Well, yeah, I suppose. I mean, the argument could be made, like the argument that you just brought forth with the Kabbalah and its possible connection to the origins of, I mean, the National Socialist movement. I mean, it's possible because I mean, you had later strong political connections. I mean, between say the Zionists and well, high-ranking Nazi officials because they had the same goals, I suppose, the Zionists and the Nazis, because both wanted the Jews out of Germany, and both wanted them resettled elsewhere. Well, the Zionists wanted them resettled in Palestine, and I think the Nazis didn't object. They had a joint expedition to Palestine at the time, where they were scouting out different locations. And I mean, you even had during I mean, at least in the early days of the Third Reich, like certain, like I would say, Jewish nationalist groups that were very similar in
Right.
fashion to the Hitler Youth, right, with the uniforms and everything else. Well, because they weren't allowed to join the Hitler Youth, so they had their own, I suppose. People argue that,
Well, so
like,
okay, so I mean, there's
right,
British Freemasons, right,
right,
which have a connection with Zionism,
yes,
and England also had a relationship with National Socialism.
right.
National Socialism was funded by the English, so that could be like a mutual ancestor, right?
Yeah, I think the plot mysticism or the ethnic component is very similar, I would say, in, say, Zionism. I mean, the focus on ethnic origin, and in National Socialism, the obsession with race. I mean, it's very similar in my opinion. Because Italian fascism doesn't have this really, because in Italian fascism you had a lot of, like, the Italian Fascist Party, at least at the beginning, before the Italians had the pact with Germany, had a lot of Jewish members, because the focus in Italian fascism was on the state and not the ethnos. And in National Socialism, the state was merely a vehicle for the ethnos, so the focus was on the ethnos. Like,
Okay.
the state has to serve the people, but I guess in fascism was the opposite. The people have to serve the state, right? So, and I guess Jewish people also have this focus on the ethnic bond. I mean, even in Israel today, right? I mean, if you have some kind of Jewish ancestry, you automatically can become a citizen of
Yeah.
Israel.
Also, by the way, if I ask you something uncomfortable because of like German speech laws, just tell me
No,
because I don't
I'm
want
well, yeah, I'm well aware of the German speech laws. That's why when
to.
I
Okay.
speak, constantly in the back of my mind, I have to think,
I
like,
don't
what.
want to like put you in an
Oh yeah, no,
uncomfortable.
no.
Like I'm a very inquisitive person, but if I don't want to put
No,
you in
it's
an
fine.
uncomfortable position because
Well,
you're under a political jurisdiction, so
yeah, yeah. No, I
I,
perfectly know what you
I'm
mean.
I
And
I I love your work. I don't want to,
like I said, I cannot speak completely freely because I mean, because
sure.
I live in Germany. I'm a German citizen, so
I appreciate speaking on this, really delicate topic. But I guess okay. So what I was interested in, okay, so there's archaeofuturism, right? And which is in your book. I read it and I had my team go through it. So who did archaeofuturism?
Guillaume
Well,
Fay.
okay, so so right now the hottest thing in archaeofuturism is to clone a red heifer. I don't know
Yes,
if you're familiar.
I'm familiar with this. Yes.
And it's to clone a red heifer, and I think they're going to blow up the Dome of the Rock mosque with like secret tunnels. That's what my sources say. Don't tell anyone. Um, and then they're gonna sacrifice the red heifer because if you touch the ashes, you're free of sins. Also, my sources. So is that an accurate depiction of archaeofuturism? Because you have the futurism from the cloning, and it's archaeo in that they're trying to return to the tradition.
I would
Would
say,
that be one application
yeah.
of
I mean,
archaeo?
I haven't heard of this theory, so I'm not familiar with it. But I would argue yes.
Okay,
It could be considered archaeofuturist.
because I guess what I'm saying is that like let's say Israel, right? So I'll say all the controversial stuff, so you don't have to.
Hmm.
So I'll do that for you. I'll take that on for you. So if Israel's built by the Rothschilds, right, and they have the financial backing to move the populations, right, and to build these new ethnic identities, right? And that's a project, right? I mean, we know that the Hebrew language was reconstructed out of Arabic. the modern one.
Which is basically another archaeofuturist project if you think about it, because it's like
So I
yes.
guess one of the things that my team was very curious about is, okay, okay, that's an archaeofuturist project in motion. Any kind of other European archaeofuturist project would require tremendous funds, right? Like what's the material component of your political proposal?
Well, if you talk about Europe, I mean, if you talk about Western Europe, I think Western Europe doesn't have a future, to be honest.
Okay.
I mean, there are hypothetical scenarios, what could happen, theoretically speaking, in Western Europe, but they're mostly fantasies. Like from a purely like political realist perspective, I mean, Western Europe has no future, and it will not disappear. Obviously, it will continue to exist. It will just lose all geopolitical relevance. It'll be like the new Mongolia, basically, because if you look at Mongolia then, one of the world's greatest superpowers, and now what is Mongolia now? It's literally nothing. Yes, like nothing at all. And Europe will be in a very, very similar position. I mean, not too far away in the future. I think
Okay.
the future's in the East. I mean, it's in Russia, it's in China, it's in India. Well, the United States, I'm not so sure. It depends, like which direction it will go. But talking about the West, because the West has fractured into different poles now. It's not one collective West anymore. It's like it's basically you have now the Trumpist West,
Okay.
the United States. Then you have the capital of liberal global homo, which is the European Union. Then you have Israel, which was always considered part of the West, but it's now also at odds with the European Union somewhat, and maybe a bit conflicted with the United States. And then, of course, you have I don't know. You could even argue that Korea was sort of like a part of the West, and Japan, right? They were sort of integrated into this Western sphere, but also going different directions now, I guess. But the biggest split is, of course, between United States and the European Union. So the so-called transatlantic alliance, the cord has been severed, so to speak.
Okay, so you wrote a whole book on Trump, right? And I guess as European, it's my belief and it's the belief of my team that the Rothschilds bailed out Trump during his bankruptcies in the 90s, and that he's controlled through that, let's say, financial structure, right? And obviously, maybe in 2024 it was hard to see that. So because he's very hooked into that, right? I know through my Jewish connections. So I mean, they tell me directly, right? So, let's say the war with Iran, maybe they would clear out Iran to create a greater Israel. So, do you just think that I don't know? In my opinion, I feel like the U.S. extracted everything it could from Europe. It's done, and now it's just gonna do this Middle Eastern project, right? Is that? I mean,
Yeah,
I guess what's your prediction without making any kind of moral thing that would be uncomfortable for you on a national level?
No, right. Well, the United States under Trump, they want to eliminate its rivals. Basically, they want to prevent the de-dollarization. Obviously, I mean that's why they took out Maduro in Venezuela. They kidnapped him, basically took over Venezuela. And I think, well, of course, Iran is in their sights, obviously, because it's one of the strongest powers in the Middle East, and it's a significant ally of I would say, not the adversaries of the United States, or the states which the United States views as adversaries, like the Russian Federation, for example. Because I think Trump is sort of like the Faustian figure. Faustian figure in the sense that he reminds me of Mephistopheles in Goethe's Faust, the German play, because Goethe always says that it is the force that actually that wants to do evil, but always ends up doing good, right? Even though it didn't really plan it that way. And I think
Well,
Trump is ushering in the multipolar world precisely by trying to prevent it, which is quite ironic,
isn't that
because
Sabbatean though? Aren't we back to?
well, because all of his actions seem to be taken out of sheer desperation, basically, because he wants to keep the United States as the global hegemon. And this is why he openly declared that international law no longer applies to him, which is a great statement, by the way, because I'm in
It's
complete
fun.
agreement. Well, because international law is a fiction anyway. It's always been a fiction. It does not exist. Because if you have a law or a so-called law that cannot be enforced, then it really ceases to be a law. I mean, the only
Okay.
law is might is right, like Ragnar Redbeard, so to speak.
Okay. So okay, there's certain. You've read Francis Parker Yockey, correct? Is that
Yeah, Imperium, of course, right.
okay?
I have.
Perfect. So Francis Parker Yockey believes in a ethnogenesis,
Right.
right?
Yes.
So do you like, because in your text you say that people are going to repatriate, but then to their ancestral homelands, right? But there's also the process of ethnogenesis. I don't want to quote leftists against you because that's
No, no,
lame and boring.
right.
But I want to quote fellow rightists and see how where you are in relation to them. So Francis Parker Yockey believes that it takes 4 generations to form a new ethnos, right? So I have a Jewish mother and a Russian father, right? And so I'm racially Soviet, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have Russian muscularity and I have this Semitic beard, and you don't know what to do with me. But we could talk about Spaniards, right? Spaniards have a lot of Moorish DNA in them. They're a mix of Moors and Visigoths, right? So
Right.
so how does that fit in with your theory? We're both political theorists here. I don't want to put you in a tough spot, but I'm just reading your text. I'm very curious.
Well, talking about, I think the new ethnogenesis is already underway, especially
Okay.
in Western Europe and the United States, with all the immigrants that you have, because a lot of people have, well, I would say non-European friends and even non-European relatives, non-European lovers. They're married to them, they're producing offspring. I mean, at an increasing rate. I mean, this is ethnogenesis happening right
Okay.
now, because if you look at the state of the West, specifically Western Europe, from a Spenglerian perspective, like
Okay.
Oswald Spengler, the German historical philosopher who wrote The Decline of the West 100 years ago in the 1920s, I mean, he argued that cultures are like organisms. So
Okay.
they're born, they grow up, they mature, and then they grow old, they wither, and then they die, just like a human being, basically. And well, in his view, the West was already in the terminal stage, in the winter phase, in the
Okay.
withering phase. And he said this 100 years ago. So it's definitely true today. I mean, because we can observe it. The point is, though, that Spengler said this is I mean, this cannot be reversed. There can be
Okay.
no renaissance. There can be no rebirth in the West. Just like an 80-year-old man cannot be 16 years old again. He might want to be 16 years old again. He might even act like a 16-year-old, but he's not 16 years old because he doesn't
Doesn't
have
your
the
text
vitality.
discuss the rebirth? I'm sorry. So sorry.
Well, he doesn't have the vitality. He doesn't have the energy of a 16-year-old and 80-year-old man, so he
Okay.
cannot go back. And the West already spent all its energy, basically. So the Faustian spirit that used to animate the West and drove great men like Christopher Columbus to new shores, and Armstrong to the moon, and always going further. This only exists as a hollow shell and as a purely, I would say, mechanical remnant, so to speak. And well, nowadays, because you have the remigration crowd. I mean, I mentioned
Okay.
remigration in my book. I talk about remigration, like, okay, let's
Sure.
come back.
But isn't it only Jews remigrating
Yeah, but
back
I
to
don't,
Israel?
I
I don't
don't
know
believe
anyone
it.
else who is.
I don't buy it though, right? I don't really believe it will happen. I think it's a masturbatory like right wing fantasy. I don't think there will be large scale remigration
Okay,
because
so are you backing away from the remigration that claim that you made in your book? Is that fair?
well, yeah, well, the claim that I made in my book, it's like a vision. This is how it should be. Yes,
Okay.
but to look at it like purely from a realistic point of view,
Okay. That's
I don't think it will happen.
okay.
And but people often misunderstand when I say this. That they somehow think like I'm against remigration or I support the status quo, which is not the case at all. I just don't believe it's possible. I just don't buy it precisely because I'm a Spenglerian at heart, and I believe Spengler was right. And we are in the final stage of the West, and nothing can save the West because the West is about to die. The West will fall, and something else will come because nature abhors a vacuum. So it's not like the West will fall and it will be nothing. Of course, there will be something. We just don't know what. And if you talk about ethnogenesis, to go back to your original question, I
Okay.
think after the West will fall, I think something new, a new culture will arise, obviously, from the ruins of the West. But the new culture will not be a continuation of the West because there can be no continuation because the West will be dead. So it will be something new. It will maybe take elements from the West, but not only from the West, because at that time, I mean, you will have so many non Europeans in Western Europe, and even these non Europeans will be part of this new project, maybe a new conservative reactionary project that pits itself against the liberal globalist project, but it will not be ethnically homogenous. It will have Europeans, but it will have a lot of peoples from other races and cultures, and will also take, I would say, spiritual elements from these peoples' heritage and fuse it into something new.
So
I
just in
think
Mexico. Are you is that let's just
what's that?
can I just simplify that into a Mexico? Mexico has European elements, but
Yeah,
there's
well, sort
obviously
of, I suppose, right?
you could have a
Well, because
Mexico of Europe. I mean,
yeah,
if you look at Russia, there's the Central Asians have a very high birth rate, right?
yeah, super high. I was just
The
discussing it the
Uzbeks
other day.
and
In like 100 years, I mean, at current rates, I mean, within the century, the Slavic Russians will be a minority, basically, in Russia. I mean, if current trends continue, I suppose. I mean, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just saying it's a thing. Because I mean, if you look at it realistically, people just have to accept that reality is not static. Like things just don't stay the same. Things are always in flux, and
okay,
this is
yeah.
definitely true if you talk about, I mean, ethnic groups.
Okay, so I mean the other thing that me and my team found in your book. So you posited the Soviet Union as a multipolar, the beginnings of multipolarity, right? And people like, let's say, all ethnic enclaves living in harmony. But I guess as soon as the Soviet Union Big Brother stopped functioning, they dissolved. They did a big ethnic conflict, right?
Right?
And so I, I guess maybe there's. Do you hold yourself to like an Aristotelian golden mean dialectic? Because there's a theorist, Alain Badiou,
Hmm.
who sees everything spiraling into chaos, right? So once the Russian Big Brother is dissolved, the Armenians and the Azerbaijanis go at it, right? And then also the Chechens were fighting the White Russians in St. Petersburg, where I was born, right?
Right.
So I, in my view, like you said, look, I don't view remigration as a negation, but the Jews moving back to Palestine, I mean, boy, are these Palestinians negated right now. I'm not celebrating it. I just know people who are doing the negating right now. But I just, as a political theorist, do you believe that there can be a dialectic without a negation? Are you moving away from a Hegelian dialectic?
No, I think I still pretty much adhere to it, to be honest.
Wait, still, we're in the negation dialectic, right?
Right.
Okay, because I don't know if you're familiar. Alain Badiou is a Maoist,
Yeah,
but
I've heard. I haven't read his work. I'm familiar with the name though, and I
okay,
haven't seen
yeah.
him
So
online.
so there's dialectics that kind of work like a metronome, and they swing back to a middle, and that'd be a
Right.
conservative view. But for him, it's a three-dimensional spiral
Mm.
into a greater and greater chaos, right?
Right.
Um, and that's how I view things. I don't know if we disagree on that position.
Yeah, but I'm not exactly sure. Like the connection you just made.
You,
You
you,
know,
you know, like
with with
I don't think
with,
these
with,
ethnic
with, the,
enclaves
with
can
the
live in peace.
Palestinians.
I
Right.
think they're just going to be fighting each other to the death for supremacy.
Right.
Um, and I'm
Yeah, but
setting the Soviet Union and Israel as an example.
yeah, I don't understand the example. I mean, okay, let me just clarify real quick. So you
Sure.
mean so you mean so you so let me just see if I got this right. So your argument is that like well, in the Soviet Union you had a sort of like ethno-pluralist harmony between the different ethnic groups
Because the Russians held them
within the
at bay.
Soviet Union, because you had the Russians, and the Russians they were called well, they were what is called the Reichsvolk, which is a German term, which means imperial people. And every empire has an imperial people. The
Sure.
imperial people is the people that, well, the dominant group, the people that actually founded the empire. And they're like the guiding ethnic group, so to speak, like the leading ethnic group. It's not meant in a chauvinist manner, though. So it's not like white supremacism like the British acted in India, where they put themselves above the
It
natives
was
on a
softer. I mean,
hierarchical
whatever.
scale.
I'm sure there are ethnic groups who were being discriminated against the Soviet Union, but I'm not here to.
Yeah, I don't think that was the case in the Soviet Union, though. I don't think there
I
was
mean,
active. I mean, not on a state level for sure, right? Of course, they were discriminated
I
against, like
mean,
if you look at the purely social level, but not as government policy.
I'm, I, I mean, I, I just, my in admission, my grandfathers were discriminated against to get into Moscow State. They had a hard time uh, at an ethnic level, right? Like,
Well,
remember
of
that
course,
like there's the passport and they have your name and your
right.
ethnos. I mean, look, it wasn't the worst discrimination, but I look, I'm not here to put pressure on you.
No, you're not putting
I,
pressure on
I
me.
have to make this
Okay,
point, otherwise, when my mom sees this video, she'll yell at me.
right.
That's
Yeah, well, if you're talking about the Jews in the Soviet Union, though, they were viewed completely differently, though. I mean, because you didn't really have, I mean, you had Birobidzhan, for example, but you didn't have like a proper Jewish Soviet Republic. Yes. So, I mean, I suppose
I,
if you
I, there was discrimination. I don't think it was the worst discrimination.
no, of course,
Um,
right.
there's people who had a worse discrimination. They
Well,
had it
but
worse. So
the Germans were discriminated in. I mean, okay,
there were the Volga Germans that
on
had a
the
really rough
Volga
time.
Germans that Stalin had sent to like Kazakhstan and
It
Uzbekistan
was
and
definitely
World War
tough for
II
them.
because he thought they were
And my family had
superpower,
Volga German
right?
friends. They were very hardworking, by the way.
Well, yeah, no, I understand. I mean, also historical reasons. But I'm talking about the big picture, like the big ethnic groups in the Soviet Union, the people that actually had republics, like the Armenians, for Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan. I mean, these people pretty much were treated as equals, I would say, in the Soviet Union. Yes, so it was a sort of ethno-pluralist
Okay,
construct
on
like
that
most empires.
sphere, right?
Well,
But
you could compare it to the Roman Empire. Like in the Roman Empire, you had like I don't know Judea, you had Germania, for example, and I guess in the Roman Empire, the Roman Empire they conquered different territories and different tribes and peoples, and they incorporated them into the empire, but they didn't force their culture and their way of life on them like
Well,
like the
wow.
contemporary liberal West is doing. Like, because when America bombs Iraq, they want to introduce democracy and gay rights and feminism.
Sure.
Well, the Romans didn't do this though. Like the Romans
Well,
mostly
I
left
mean,
it
you're putting me in a
alone,
tough
right?
spot because, when my friends watch, I have to, like, they're going to be like, you didn't say
Yeah,
anything.
it's okay, right? I mean, okay,
Um,
so they
I,
expected.
I see where you're coming from. I think it's hard to run an empire without stepping on ethnic groups' feet. And I
Right.
think all empires inevitably step on ethnic groups' feet, right? Like,
Well, only the ones that resist, obviously. I mean, because
well,
it's an
I mean,
empire, so it's Central Europe.
um, I, I, I,
So,
I guess I'm afraid of what my family is going to do. Um, so I look, ooh, I would say every empire steps. I don't think it's possible to rule in a completely clean way, and I don't want to defend in any empires. I was just saying that without some kind of overruling hegemon or Leviathan, you would move into an ethnic conflict until
but
a
the eth-
hegemon
but the,
emerges.
yeah, well, no, but the ethnic conflicts only break out when after the empire breaks up,
Okay.
when people revert to the more primitive nationalist forms, basically, because empire is superior to the nation state. It's a superior construct because it preserves ethnic peculiarities much more than a nation state does. Because a nation state, by definition,
Okay, sure. Okay,
is
from like
also
if the nation state's bourgeois,
well,
right?
well,
Then it would
it's a
dissolve you
it's
in
a
liberalism.
it's a well, it's a leveling construct. I mean, it's an invention of the French Revolution, and
Okay, okay,
it wants all citizens to conform to a national standard, and it doesn't like small tribes that deviate from the standard, like the Sorbs in Germany or the Basques, for example. And
okay.
but in the empire, you don't have this problem. You can preserve even the smallest entities in a much better way.
Oh, okay. So I guess every ethnoses tend to stick together, and there's corruption games that are played historically, right? And wouldn't it? I just feel like wouldn't there constantly be an ethnic conflict in terms of, let's say, in the Soviet Union, the Chechens really made a push in the post-Soviet period. The Chechens really had a crime network early on, right, in the 90s in Russia,
Okay.
right?
Uh-huh.
There were
Right.
ethnic gangs, and then maybe that moved into a civil war when they, from with those means and with the help of the CIA, fought to make let's say, looked for an ethnic autonomy. And I think now there's a Vladimir Putin Kadyrov deal that kind of.
Well, the deal is
I,
I think the deal that Putin has with Kadyrov is very similar to the deal that the Romans had with their like chieftains in the conquered territories.
okay,
Basically, if you show loyalty to the center, to the imperial capital, and to the emperor, then you are pretty much left alone to do your own thing. You can do whatever you want, basically. And
okay,
I mean, I find this a very positive development, to be honest. And this is how things should be run, and I think this is how things will be run in the future, because the state civilizations, which is just a euphemism for empire, I mean, these are the
right,
sovereign, only really sovereign actors in the world today.
okay. So I just, I, you know, like Alain de Badiou's solution lies in these ethnic enclaves, but I guess my contention is ethnic enclaves tend to, they have borders, right? And at those borders, they certain influence. You see what I'm saying?
But how do but
Like,
how, not really, how does he envision the ethnic enclaves as what kind of constructs exactly?
I mean, I don't understand how an ethnic enclave. I mean, an ethnic enclave sounds like a ghetto to me,
Exactly. I mean,
right?
well,
But
well, Well, an example could be is Orania in South Africa, is it an ethnic enclave? Well, by definition, I would say yes, right? Because only like white Afrikaners are admitted into Orania. I mean, it's a beautiful town, has its own infrastructure, like I don't know, a fire department, police station, schools, everything. It's completely self-contained, but it's inside a proper state, which is South Africa, and it's just tolerated by the
Sure.
South African state. So, I mean, a South African
Okay.
state theoretically could decide tomorrow, well, we don't like Oranje anymore, and within a day they could just dissolve the whole thing. They could just send the South African military, and Oranje, of course, could not defend itself. I'm not going to say that's what's going to happen, but it could happen theoretically.
But
So how is that a viable option to sort of
well,
protect ethnic groups?
I'm quoting from your book, right? So I don't believe ethnic enclaves to be a viable, thing. Palestine is an ethnic enclave. They're not doing too good. I have an article in my book called "Escaping Castrated Space" because I
Yes,
believe the ethnic enclave is death. It's just a hospice, right? And if you find yourself in an ethnic enclave, you need to break out,
right.
right? I mean, I don't see that as good. And I, I understand that like that Europe's on the receiving end of the Kalergi plan. If we're gonna cite
Yeah,
Yaki.
I don't think there's a Kalergi plan though, because he didn't plan it. I mean, he made predictions, but he didn't necessarily endorse what he predicted, and I don't
Okay,
think he actually had a plan, right?
do you think so? Okay, um, so if I'm just an inquisitive person, I'm not trying to be disrespectful.
Yeah, it's okay. No
So
problem.
from a kabbalistic, from a I hold you up as a very high level intellectual, and I'm really grateful to be speaking to you. So from a kabbalistic standpoint, the position is that if you can split a group of people away from their divine essence, from their guardian angel, because every nation has a guardian angel, they dissolve into a klipothic realm of masturbation and degeneracy. And
Mhm.
if they stay in the darkness long enough, they're going to be split off from like a divine spirit, and then they're going to die, right?
Okay,
And
right.
so I think there is a book by Evola that speaks on that. It's called it's not metaphysic or something. Can you help me out here? No, it's this book about the occult war or something,
Right.
right? So from I guess from a multipolar standpoint, right? So like I think Judeo-Archaeofuturism is going really well. So how can the European race reconnect to its divine source so they don't jerk themselves off into oblivion?
Well, they
I mean
cannot
that
because they can't because they're on the way out. Well, you have the phenomenon what Spengler called the second religiousness, where you have a sudden wave of people, I mean, converting to Christianity or sects or any other religion, basically, because they want to escape the degeneracy, the emptiness of it all, of the late stage civilization. But this phenomenon in itself is a symptom of decline, and it's only transient. It will prolong the period before the fall, but it will not stop it. It's the same with like figures like Trump. I mean Orban maybe, because he talks about the age of the Caesars. So during the age of decline, you have these strong men that come and assert their authority, basically. But it's not an anti-democratic thing. It's a culmination of democracy because they pretty much project what the masses want anyway.
okay.
But devoid of all spirituality or transcendence. So it's purely materialist, this new kind of Caesarism, basically. And again, it will just prolong the inevitable. It will not stop it. So how can the Europeans go back? They cannot go back because Europe is the sick old man of the world right now,
Okay.
and it's on its deathbed, and we just have to wait out the demise basically and hope what comes after will be interesting and better to what we have now.
Okay, so there's the Russian Orthodox Church, which I'm told is heavily influenced by the Russian state, right? Um, but do you believe that they're funding that institution well enough to create a spiritual reinvigoration of Russia and the Russian soul?
Well, from personal experience, I just came back from Moscow. I was in Moscow for like a month and came back.
They're doing better now?
Yeah, better. Who's doing better? You
The
mean
Russians spiritually.
Well, yeah, I think so. Yes, I mean the advances Russia has made. I mean, the last 10 years are amazing. I mean, just in terms of infrastructure and development,
Okay.
and also if you talk about the spiritual life, I mean, there are lots of new churches being built left and right.
Okay, that's positive.
Old churches being renovated, and
Okay.
I'm not Orthodox, but
Okay.
I respect the Orthodox religion. I have a great deal of respect and often visit the churches. And I mean, there are always quite a lot of people in the churches during church
There.
service. I have a lot of Russian friends that identify with the church. So, I mean,
Okay.
from what I see and from what I've read, I think there is a spiritual renaissance. And I would also like to state that Russia is not part of the West. So when I say that the West is dying, I don't include Russia in the West. It's a separate entity. And I agree with Dugin, because Dugin states the same, that Russia is not really the West. I mean, there's a lot of Western elements in
Sure.
part of Russia, part of Europe, obviously, but it's not the West. It does not have, well, there's several things it doesn't have. It doesn't share with the West, like crucial things. It doesn't have the Faustian spirit, in my opinion, not to the extent
Okay.
that the West does. It did not have any kind of Protestant
Sure, of
Reformation.
course.
Yes, it did not have the French Revolution. It did not have the virus of egalitarianism spread like it did in the West. So it pretty much always stayed hierarchical and authoritarian throughout its entire existence. And it was never a nation state. It was always an imperial construct, I would say.
Do you see?
Yes.
Okay, so Germany is arming itself right now, and I think there was some stuff about conscription. Do you think?
Yeah, I don't think it will. I mean, I don't. It's possible. It depends. I mean, lots of things are possible nowadays.
Okay.
Conscription, maybe. Yeah. Well, Friedrich Merz, the German chancellor, a couple of weeks ago said, yeah, it's very important that Germany sends soldiers to Ukraine to keep the peace,
Right.
and if necessary, also shoot at Russian soldiers. I mean,
Sure.
that's just wow. It's a quite outrageous statement, in my opinion, considering the history that Germany has with Russia. I mean, with the Operation Barbarossa, when the Nazis invaded the Soviet Union and were responsible for, I mean, 27 million people died, almost 20 million civilians. I mean, it's unimaginable the kind of suffering and death that the Germans brought on the Russian people. And then
so obviously I know about that, but obviously the Russian people did stuff back, which my ancestors did. So I feel for Germany, because my great grandfather really robbed Germany really well.
Right.
He put a lot of stuff on boxcars and just sent it back. So I think there's a lot of victims on both sides. So is Ukraine in archaeofuturism? What?
Excuse me? What?
Oh, I was just saying that East Germany was looted a lot, and the Russians really took their revenge as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I see both sides as victims.
But not really. I mean, not really. I mean, they were the victors, and victors act like victors, but they didn't really exact revenge. in the way that they could have. I mean, they were very, very
Sure.
they were very restrained, if you ask me. I mean, and they helped build up East Germany, the East German economy, and had a very strong relationship with East Germany. I mean, it was under Soviet or Russian influence for decades, and I think that's also one of the main reasons why now you have this phenomenon of East Germany. According to the latest polls, the AfD, the Alternative for Germany, I guess the only patriotic opposition party in Germany these days, is at 40% or higher, while in West Germany it's way below 20%, like between 10 and 15%, I would say. And it's always been like this. Like East Germany,
Okay.
even after the fall of the wall, has always been more conservative than West Germany. And the same phenomenon can be observed in other, like, I know, Central European states, so Eastern European states like Poland and Hungary, Romania. And I think this goes back to what you mentioned at the beginning of the show when you showed us Dugin's book, Templars of the Proletariat. I mean, because Dugin makes the same argument that with a phrase when he said that basically national Bolshevism is a misnomer. It's just Bolshevism, because according to Dugin, Bolshevism by itself was always a conservative force and not the destabilizing force. I mean, that's early Dugin talking, not contemporary Dugin, not Dugin right now. And to some
Okay.
extent, I mean, okay, if you look at the Soviet Union, the early Soviet Union, it was completely degenerate, obviously, with like orgies and pedophilia, homosexuality, rampant feminism.
Sure.
Yeah, but then after Stalin took the reins, I think things went in a completely different direction. And the Soviet Union was an extremely conservative force. I mean,
So
besides, yeah, and I
so
think
let's
this is the reason why
so
East Germany even today is more conservative. Sorry. Anyway,
sorry to cut you.
no, that's
So
fine.
we've
I'll
discussed
listen if you want
Faustianism,
to.
right? So there is you're familiar with Jacob Frank, correct?
You disappeared. I
Yeah.
can't.
Sorry.
Uh, yeah, it's okay. There was
Oh,
some
are you familiar with Jacob Frank?
no.
Okay, so there is a position that it's called salvation through sin, right? So if we discuss Faustianism, um, you know what Sabbateanism is, and in Frankism, which takes Sabbateanism further, if you want after the show, I'll send you whatever resources you want. I'll send you the writings of Jacob Frank if you want to read satanic literature. But his position is that the strength of love is stronger than anything else, right? And that by getting a bunch of people to do orgies, like in Epstein's Island, they could form a political class that's loyal to itself, right? And
Right.
if you look at who's the French guy? Who's the French guy who wrote pornography?
From the Marquis de Sade.
Marquis de Sade. Marquis de Sade, right? So Marquis de Sade is influenced by this, right? Um, and so, I mean, if you're talking about I don't know, I think we both know where Freemasonry leads, and I think we both know where Epstein Island leads and what Hollywood does. But I think their political technology isn't to rely on violence like an authoritarian regime. I think their political technology is to film orgies, and that seems to hold political coalitions together very effectively, right?
Maybe, possibly. I mean, I can't really comment on it because, I mean,
Don't don't comment on it.
I mean, it's
Just make a
plausible.
facial
It's plausible.
expression. You know,
Yeah.
I understand the censorship regime, so if you can just make a facial expression. Uh, but I guess that, right. So if that's what Faustianism is, right? If a core part of those rituals is sexual things, right? You can't have the devil without sexual stuff, right? I don't.
Right.
I think a lot of Catholic priests would agree, and I think if you had a Russian Orthodox guy next to you, he would say, "Look, you can't have Faustianism without degenerate sexual acts," right? I think the Russian Orthodox Church will agree with me on that position. Um, so I guess I guess kind of my question is, there is a medieval technology of using violence and authoritarianism and speech acts on one hand, but there's also a Venetian method of sexual blackmail, right? And that seems to be, in my opinion, a more effective. I'm not speaking morally, but I'm just saying from a utilitarian. The sexual blackmail seems to be more effective than the Ivan Grozny situation, right?
Right.
And is that because I know early Dugin plays around with those themes in Templars of the Proletariat, and I think he had Limonov, who either engaged in homosexual acts or just wrote about it, and he was more on that side, right? But it just seems to be the more effective political technology, as troubling as that may be, right?
Right.
Is not what it's going to come down to, who can control people the best and the cheapest.
Yeah, but it depends what kind of people you're talking about. I mean, I think it's personally, I would say it's exaggerated. I mean, when you talk about Epstein Island, I mean, some people argue it's like a Mossad operation, and they use, well, like you said, they use it
Sure.
to blackmail politicians and other influential people, which is certainly plausible for sure. I mean, yeah,
Okay.
definitely. Um, but I don't think it's like every influential person in a given society would participate in such, I would say, I don't know, acts, because a lot of people are just decent people, even if they are in power, and they would
But
definitely not condone it. So I
if
think
if we're in
people
the
should
Kali
know it,
Yuga, right,
right?
and we're dealing with the lowest caste of people, I take it you know basic Hinduism,
Yeah,
who
I lived
who
in India actually for 3 years.
okay, so the lowest caste is driven by pleasure, right? Is
Right,
that correct?
right.
So if we're in a Kali Yuga and the majority of people are driven by pleasure, wouldn't the sexual blackmail island be the most effective political configuration in
Yes,
such a time?
absolutely. Definitely. I'm in agreement. Yes.
I guess that's kind of the, you know, yeah. I guess there's a political Platonism that comes from Dugin, and this is something I explore indirectly in my book. That in the beginning there's a Uranic age or a golden age, and then we go lower and lower and lower and lower and lower, right? Through the doctrine of cycles, which a lot of traditional cultures have. But if we're in the lowest age, wouldn't the most effective methodology be blackmail and pornography, given that is the spiritual disposition of the lowest wrong that we're in? You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, I'm just
No,
trying to
no, I
take
do.
Dugin to his natural conclusion, and I'm trying to touch on things that maybe he's a state philosopher, so maybe he doesn't want to talk about it, but I'm not.
Yeah, I don't think he's a state philosopher, but
Oh, okay.
he doesn't work for the government.
Is
So
he willing to take it to its um who's that French guy? The accursed chair? But is Dugin willing to go all the way down into the Bataille position?
yeah, I don't. Well, I think that was early Dugin. Yes, I think now he's more in line with the whole multipolar project and positioning Russia within the coming world. So I think he has become more conservative in the sense that he's shed all this. I think all these esoteric trappings, so to speak, and
Well,
is
I mean,
yeah,
if the Epstein
seems
Island works, then it's pretty utilitarian, right?
yeah, well, he seems to be more in line with what the standard narrative is in Russia regarding certain issues like the conflict in Ukraine. Um, Yeah, but I
But
don't think.
okay, let's say Zelensky, right? So
Right.
Zelensky is filmed doing things that are homosexual adjacent, from what I understand, right?
Yeah,
I'm
what
no
do you
fan
think?
of Ukraine,
Right. Okay.
um, but you could say that the Ukrainian project definitely is run in that way, in a Venetian way, right? And it seems to be a strong enough political technology to create problems for Russia. I'm not a fan of Ukraine. Obviously, in my book, I write against Ukraine, but um, I'm just speaking one political scientist to another
Yeah, I don't follow you
without
though. Like, I don't see how is that creating problems for Russia.
because if we're to me it seems like there is the old technology of violence and KGB and that, right? and
Right.
and the Soviet Union functioned through that, but I think that violence is very expensive, right? Whereas it
Right.
seems to be that this new technology is a lot cheaper and a lot more effective. And
Uh-huh.
and that is why the Faustian civilization is able to rule, because it's using a more contemporary political structure. Is that
Okay.
okay?
Yeah.
So, I know the KGB did some blackmail back in the day, like
Right.
compromat and stuff like that. But
Hmm.
it just seems to be that the West fully runs on it.
Right. Okay.
I
I
just
don't see the connection. What's the connection to Russia though? I don't see it.
I just feel like if you want a multipolar world, you gotta have your own blackmail island. It's a blackmail island arms race.
Yeah, well, possibly, right? But there are other means. I'm not sure, like how the. I mean,
But what if that's the most efficient means to
so you
to
you mean you mean to keep people in line basically in any given state, or what do you mean?
so if you're gonna have to rule over these different districts, right? Like, the Soviet Union had a hard time keeping Hungary in check and keeping Czechoslovakia in check, right? And
Right.
they constantly had to go there and threaten their leaders to toe the party line. But if
Okay.
they just filmed them doing stuff,
Well, if they did
maybe
stuff,
they
maybe
wouldn't
they were
have
doing
to
stuff, right?
bring tanks into Prague.
Yeah, possibly. Yes. Okay.
Because I read about this. There's different kinds of warfare, right? There's first
Hmm.
generation warfare, second generation warfare, right? And there's also an information cyber war, right?
Right. Okay.
And that's something that the Russian state is going to have to start doing better, in my opinion.
Well,
You
there's a
know,
lot of
I
things they have to do better, like also in terms of soft power, obviously, which they're
okay,
still learning. And I think it's a process, so it will take some time, obviously.
okay,
Also, I think with artificial intelligence is very important. I think that because that's the future anyway. So, I mean, if you don't invest the money and energy required to do proper AI research, you'll be left behind anyway.
okay.
Uh, well, a lot of people don't understand it actually, the crucial importance of AI. I'm sure you do. Well, a lot of people on the right, they demonize it, yes, because they don't understand how it actually works, I suppose. And it's like the genie that's out of the bottle because it will not go away. And well, it goes back to archaeofuturism, where you basically, like Julius Evola, you have to like ride the tiger. You cannot abolish it. You cannot become a neo-Luddite. You have to
Okay.
accept the technological developments, and well, you have to harness them so they serve your culture and are not destructive.
But there is a book that I have. What was the guy? It was very thick. He was in India. Chad Haig. What's it called? There's a book called Hermeneutical Death, and it says that all technology functions to erode subjectivity. Can you
Mhm.
hand it to me? And that by definition, I mean, I think Heidegger has similar discourse, and I think Chad Haig. Do you know about hermeneutical death?
No, I'm not here. Well, enlighten me.
He is a he is a philosophy student. He had huge loans to the U.S. government, and he ran off to India to not pay those loans. And then he decided to write the biggest book he could that Amazon would publish.
Wow.
Okay. And there's Theodore Kaczynski's anti-tech Ludditism. And he cites Evola here. I think he cites Heidegger. I'm very careful because I don't want to take him out of context. But his position is that any use of technology over time will erode your subjectivity. And, well, actually, Nick Land would also make that position, right? I think Dugin cites Nick Land.
They talked about it when they had the discussion a couple of months ago.
Okay.
Right.
And then Dugin also discusses technology as Satanism, right? And I think a lot of Shiites, they say you trapped a jinn in sand, right? And I think Dugin sometimes likes his Shiites. Is that correct? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, but I think Dugin has modified his position somewhat in light of like developments regarding like Elon Musk and what happened like at the beginning of the second Trump administration, where and even artificial intelligence, where he basically has become more accepting of the fact that it actually exists, and it cannot be banished, it cannot be condemned because it will not go away. And I think he even advocates now that Russia pursues this artificial intelligence path if it wants to be competitive with the West, and there's no other way, obviously.
Okay. Yeah, I guess so. Okay, so it's fair to say that over time you've modified your views. I don't want to have weird gotcha moments on you. In light of, let's say, very rapid cultural change. Is that a fair assessment? Is that okay?
Yeah, I would say so, yes.
Okay. All right. So what questions do you have for me? I know I mailed you a crazy book that is accelerationist in many ways. And I was trying to capture the youth and move them towards a Duginism of sorts. Right. And obviously the gender war is part of the broader information war. And if we're discussing ethnos, I think reproduction is the core of it, right? And so do you have any questions for me? What discussion points were you interested in?
So if you talk about the future of the West, how do you personally envision it?
Okay. Well, so
I mean, with especially in light of what's happening right now, because I mean, developments are happening very, very fast now, almost on a daily basis.
Okay, so there's an eschatology, right, where like the end times kind of thing, right? And so I think there's a tremendous incentive to rebuild the temple, the third temple, and to build greater Israel, and they need a Gog versus Magog war, right? Which is something that Dugin talked about. So I think that's kind of their recipe for the future, and they're very upfront about it. That they're ready for the Messiah. They say we want the Messiah now. And so in the end, I have the beast of Revelation, and that we're in an awkward pre-apocalypse period, right? And we're kind of waiting for, I have the beast of Revelation, and it seems to be that they're going for that. And I would say that people like yourself should get out of the way before the missiles start flying.
Yeah, missiles start flying where exactly?
Well, so there's Edom, right? So they're the Edomites,
right?
And if we look at the Hebrew Bible, a lot of Europeans could be held to be Edomites in the sense that they are so egoic as to deny God. They're
Right,
so
right.
into themselves that they're going to deny God. And they see Edom as a continuation of Rome. And if you look at Netanyahu, I think he makes that connection. And regardless of the morality of that, those are very scary words. And I like Europeans. I like Germans. I like German stuff. I have a German watch. I think it's super cool. I have a Zinn watch. And I don't want you guys to get hit in an apocalypse bullshit war. So I would ask you guys to move to Mexico before the bullshit happens.
Yeah, okay,
Because
right,
I believe
right,
Netanyahu. I think he's
right,
very good at advancing his agenda, and
right.
I think more Europeans should take him seriously, and they should get out of the way.
Right. No, well, yeah, okay, right.
Sorry to
Uh,
be so negative,
yeah, no, it's
but
fine. So do you think it could lead to a global conflagration then, like this project specifically of Greater Israel? Because I mean, if you have a nuclear exchange or any kind of nuclear attack, I mean, the repercussions could be quite significant. I would say.
so they need to do like a chaos out of order, like Phoenix Rising thing. So they need to destroy the old order so they can build the new order from scratch, right?
Right.
Because on LibGen you can download all of the. There's a lot of texts that religious authorities wouldn't want you to read, but you can just download them right now. You can just go for it. If you want, I'll send them to you. We could.
Okay. Right.
I'm on your team. I don't want you to get hit by a Netanyahu situation. And he's been. Once again, you don't have to agree. You can just make a face. But he's very effective. He's very effective,
Right.
and I would caution people to get out of the way, and maybe live under a different national configuration.
What do you mean by this exactly? Different national configuration.
Well, so Europe, they're demolishing it, right? And it's an open question of whether they're just going to do it through mass migration or if they're going to do a deindustrialization Green New Deal.
No, wait, who are they though? Like you're saying, they.
The globalists,
Sorry?
they will just they're going to demolish Europe through a.
Who?
They're just going to make electricity so expensive that you won't be.
Yeah, but who are they? Who's going to demolish Europe?
I think the United Nations,
But
the Soros people.
Yeah, well, to some extent, right? But isn't most of it self-inflicted though? Because you could compare it to the late stage of the Roman Empire, like Augustus, when all ties were equally cut, and the emperor and the empire, they proclaimed the utmost importance of mankind as a whole, and not a certain ethnicity or a certain tribe. And I guess today, what we're witnessing in the West is very similar because all ties are cut. I mean, the ties to your nation, the ties to your ethnicity or race, and well, the ties to your sexuality because men, women, it doesn't make a difference anymore. And with transhumanism, even.
Well, so that can be an age of Aquarius, correct?
Yeah, well, so if you talk to the average German today, for example, I mean the AfD has now an approval rating according to the latest polls of like what 25%. I mean it's significant, I suppose. It's like a quarter of Germans support what the AfD wants, but it also means that the three quarters don't support it, which is the absolute majority, 75%. It's 3 times as many people in Germany don't want what the AfD wants, which means they want to continue down the globalist road, basically. But what is the reason for this? The reason for this is because we're in the winter phase of the West, and they don't have a concept of ethnicity or nation anymore, or race or whatever. So if you talk to the average German, and it's not just Germans, yeah, you could say this, the average Swede or the average Brit, or to some extent even the average American. I mean, in America it's a bit different though. So the average European, I should say, Western European, like if you told this person like you should really take you should really, make sure that your nation survives, or
Sure.
that your people survive, the ethnic Brits or the ethnic French, or the white race survives. They would look at you as if you're like a completely insane person, because they have no concept of it. Because and it is not sort of like a new stage of European
It's a
mankind.
logical progression. So
Well, they're just going back to a more primitive state, the primitive state of mankind, which is just like the pure selfish individualism, basically. But that's a hallmark of the
but shouldn't
West.
people just leave and integrate into another culture before you hit that terminal? You know what I mean? Like,
Well, their descendants will somehow. I mean, it's a long process, because it's not like the fall happens overnight. It can be
well,
drawn
why don't
out.
you leave before you hit that terminal zero? Like why don't
Well,
you get
yeah,
out
well,
early?
yeah. Well, you will already have. I will tell you. You probably already have the nucleus of what will come after the West, obviously. So a lot of people will be a part of it, but not the majority. And they will be integrated into the new structure somehow, because again, there's a sort of continuity, a biological continuity. It's not like the people will completely disappear. I mean,
Nick
after the
Land would
fall of the Roman.
push up a
Sorry.
post-humanism, though. Nick Land pushes a post-humanism, and if you
Yeah.
look at a Peter
Yeah.
Thiel,
Right.
they're into population reduction, and with the pandemic, right? They
Yeah.
made the population reduction a state mandate, right?
Yeah, I
So
don't.
so they
No,
could
wait,
just,
wait, 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 wait. Wait. How did they make population reduction a
well,
state
if you
mandate?
vaccinate people with mRNA and you
Okay.
give them heart issues, and a lot of people did die from the vaccine.
Yeah, I didn't.
I
Yeah,
don't know
I
if
don't
you're
think
I
that
don't know
many
if you're
people
allowed
died.
to agree.
I don't think that many people died of the vaccine, to be honest.
Okay.
I mean, I know a lot of people that got vaccinated, like a lot, and not one of them died, right, of the vaccine,
Okay.
as far as I know. I mean, and because
There are some
I hear,
differences of
well,
opinion, but
well, I don't know. I hear these theories, like the
okay.
vaccine is a weapon to kill people. But then, I mean, how statistically, like mathematically, like if I know like 100 people that got vaccinated, and not a single one of them died, like how is
I
that?
mean, I know a bunch
How
of
is
people
that
who died from the
plausible?
vaccine
Yeah, I
personally,
don't
but
though. Like, right.
okay.
I mean,
I don't.
I don't. Well, certain people have also told me they know people that died of the vaccine, but I mean, it was always circumstantial, though, right? Like without. I mean, I
Okay.
don't know.
Well,
Like, I'm not an
okay.
I'm not an
I
expert
don't
on
want
the
to
vaccine.
push on things that you're not allowed to talk about. That so okay. So
Right.
there's UN Agenda 2030,
Right.
and they do have a population reduction, and they do have a resource throttling, and they are trying to get people to eat less meat, which is highly nutritious. And there seems to be a general depopulation, right? And so they could depopulate large parts of the earth through these very powerful technologies in a class war, right? Once these people are no longer useful because of technological developments. Whenever there's a technological development, large swaths of population become they have to reskill or they become useless. Correct?
Well, yeah,
So
but certain people like Elon Musk, they propagate the UBI idea, like universal basic income, because that's what it will amount to. Because if you
sure.
have like millions of people not having any jobs, because there are no more jobs, because everything is done by AI and robots, what are they going to do all day, and how are they going to
Well,
support
they're
themselves?
going to genocide them on UBI slowly through endless restrictions
Right. Well, yeah, maybe, or I know, just offer them bread and games, basically. I mean, I think
until
that's
they
quite likely.
stop reproducing and die. I mean,
Right.
I
Well,
hate.
but they're already doing this anyway, especially in the West. I mean, people have stopped reproducing decades ago. I mean, what is the
Okay.
it's like what is the fertility rate? It's like 1.3. It's like way below
Okay.
replacement level. And actually, this is a phenomenon all over the world. Like even in Africa, the population is shrinking just at a very, 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 very slow rate, but it is also shrinking. So it's a global
Okay.
phenomenon. It's not just in the West. And I just read an article a couple of weeks ago that just in Nigeria, just the country of Nigeria alone, more people are born every year than in all of Europe, including Russia. Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, what does that mean, though, for the future of Europe? I mean, it means a lot of things. Because, I mean, you will have millions and millions of young Africans wanting to move to Europe. and well, I think they will move to Europe. So who's going to prevent them from doing so? Certainly not the current European Union, not the people in charge right now, because you're facilitating this.
Okay.
I don't know. It's just, I don't know, interesting developments ahead, I should say.
Yeah, interesting in the interesting times, kind of thing.
Right. Yes. May you live in interesting times. The
I think we live in very interesting times. Yeah. So
Definitely.
I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for answering my questions. I know I drilled deep into you, and thanks for being a good
Sure, no
sport.
problem.
Thanks for, I think it's really amazing what you did. I know how dense Dugin text can be, and I read your book as well, and I read your Trump book, and but I think your ability to compile Dugin into something that's readable in English is truly impressive.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I thank you for that, because the younger generation has access to Dugin, and instead of just trying to download it on vcontact.ru and passing it through a translator, right? So I think you really made a great philosopher accessible to people, and I think that required a lot of work, and I'm truly, truly grateful for you for your efforts.
Right.
Thank you so much for talking to the author of a red pill book, which can be pretty crazy. So thank you for taking a chance on me. I really appreciate you.